Hey everybody, this is Caleb over at Common Motor, and today we're talking about the different fork architectures Honda used throughout the 70s and how to tell what's on your bike. Throughout the late 60s and 70s, Honda made a lot of different forks for a lot of different motorcycles. Now, we don't have all those here, but over at Common Motor, we've narrowed that down to 4 different architectures they used that apply to just about every single fork throughout that time period. Now, we've given them each a unique name. That way you know exactly what's on your motorcycle at home, and you know which one of our rebuild videos that you need to watch if you're rebuilding the forks at home as well. Now, what we're gonna call them is the external spring fork. We have an internal spring fork with dampening rod, an internal spring fork without dampening rod, and a sealed spring fork. We're gonna go through each one of them and let you know what are the features of each architecture of fork and what to look out for. So the first fork you'll encounter is this one. This is primarily used for eating. As you can see, the sharp tips on the top are great for poking through poultry, especially. And the flared bottom allows it to not slip out of your hand in the middle of a deep feast. So the first actual fork we are going to look at is this external spring fork. Some of the interesting things about it is it uses a bolt-through triple tree design. So the triple tree does not clamp around the outside of the fork tube. Instead, the fork tube slides through the triple tree and the top cap threads and clamps them together. The second, more obvious thing about this fork is it has an external spring versus the internal spring you'll find in most forks. Motorcycles that use this are ones like the CB350, CL350, CB450, and CL450, all of the earlier models. The second type of fork we're going to look at is the internal spring with dampening rod version. Now this uses a triple tree that clamps around the top of the fork. It also has a unique internal design where there's not only a spring running the length of the fork, but a dampening rod that runs through the inside of the spring up to the top cap and screws into the top cap itself. So if you're taking off your top cap, you need to unscrew the top cap from the dampening rod to be able to remove it. Then you can take out the spring. This is also the version that's used in the later models of the 350s, the CB350s, CL350s, CB450s, and CL450s. The third fork we're going to be going over is our internal spring without dampening rod fork. Now, it's very similar to the last one in that it uses a clamp around triple tree design, but the main difference is that there's no internal dampening rod running the length of the fork, just the internal spring with the dampener at the bottom. So if you remove the top cap, it's just going to pop right out, and you can immediately take the fork spring out. Honda used this on the majority of the motorcycles we support, ones like the CB CL200, all the CB CL360s, CB 500 and 550s, and the CB 750s. The fourth and final fork style is what we call the sealed spring fork. Now this one uses a very similar triple tree design to the external spring fork, in that the tube goes into the triple tree and the top cap threads into the fork to secure them together. The main reason we call this the sealed spring fork is because you cannot remove the spring without disassembling the entire fork. Unlike the other forks where the spring comes out of the top of the fork, this one you need to actually disassemble everything, remove the seals just to get to the fork spring. This was primarily used in bikes like the CB175 and CL175 early models, as well as a lot of the other small CC motorcycles that Honda made. Now that we've gone over the different architectures of forks, keep in mind that each architecture is going to have several different sizes depending on the motorcycle you're working on. So be sure to measure the outer diameter of your fork tube and the inner diameter of the lower. That way you know the exact seal that you need for your motorcycle. Also, don't forget to check out our rebuild videos on each of the different architectures to make sure you know how to put those seals in the forks that you have at home. This is Caleb, again, at Common Motor. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, subscribe to our newsletter over at common-motor.com, and subscribe to this YouTube channel right down below. We'll see you next time.